Marcus Reed walked through the dimly lit maintenance tunnels of Space Station Unity, his footsteps echoing against the metal walls. He wasn't supposed to be here. Junior diplomats usually stuck to the brightly lit upper levels where all the important meetings happened. But he had always been curious about the parts of the station others ignored. The soft hum of machinery filled the air when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A quiet whimper, barely louder than the station's background noise. Marcus stopped, holding his breath. There it was again. "Hello," he called out, keeping his voice gentle. "Is someone there?" The whimper turned into a frightened gasp. In the shadows ahead, something moved, something that glowed. Marcus stepped forward carefully, his hand raised to show he meant no harm. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The dim emergency lights reflected off his Earth Embassy badge. That's when he saw her properly. She was huddled in a corner where two maintenance pipes met, her skin giving off a soft golden light that pulsed with her rapid breathing. A luminary, one of the gentlest species in the Stellar Alliance. Her large, silver eyes were wide with fear. "Please," she whispered in broken English, her voice shaking. "Please help. They look for me." Marcus crouched down, keeping his distance so he wouldn't frighten her more. The luminary were known throughout the galaxy as peacekeepers and artists. Seeing one so terrified made his stomach twist. "Who's looking for you?" he asked, noticing how her light dimmed when she trembled. "Bad ones," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "Want to hurt, because I know things." Marcus glanced back the way he had come. He should report this. There were proper channels for asylum seekers, forms to fill out, protocols to follow. But one look at her trembling form made him pause. How long would bureaucracy take? What if the people she was running from found her first? A maintenance drone whirred past in the tunnel, and she pressed herself harder against the wall, her glow nearly disappearing in fear. "Listen," Marcus said, making a decision that would change everything. "I have private quarters in the diplomatic section. You'll be safe there while we figure this out." He slowly offered his hand. "Will you trust me?" She stared at his hand for a long moment, her silver eyes unblinking. Then, with movements as delicate as starlight, she reached out and took it. Her fingers were warm, and her touch sent a slight tingling sensation up his arm. "Name?" she asked as he helped her up. "Marcus. Marcus Reed." He smiled, trying to reassure her. "And you?" She hesitated, her glow flickering like a candle in the wind. "Hard. In your tongue." "That's okay," Marcus said, noticing how her golden light reminded him of sunrise on Earth. "Would it be all right if I called you Dawn?" A small smile appeared on her face, and her glow brightened slightly. "Dawn," she repeated, as if testing how the word felt. "Yes, good name." Marcus led her through the maintenance tunnels, taking the least used routes to the diplomatic quarter. He used his badge to bypass several security checkpoints, each beep of acceptance making Dawn jump slightly. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice how gracefully she moved despite her fear, how her eyes took in everything around them. There was intelligence in those silver eyes, deep and careful. Finally, they'd reached his quarters. As the door closed behind them, Dawn's glow steadied, filling the room with soft golden light. "Safe now," Marcus said, already thinking about how he would explain this to his superiors. "You can rest here." Dawn looked around the room, her glow pulsing gently. "Thank you, Marcus Reed," she said, her English suddenly seeming a little clearer. "I not forget this kindness." Marcus smiled, not knowing that this moment, this simple act of compassion, would set in motion events that would change the fate of humanity forever. 3 days had passed since Marcus brought Dawn to his quarters. He had expected keeping an alien hidden in the diplomatic section to be harder, but Dawn made things surprisingly easy. She barely made a sound, and her ability to dim her natural glow made her nearly invisible when anyone came to visit. "Earth battle's very interesting," Dawn said one evening, looking up from the tablet Marcus had given her. She had learned English quickly, almost too quickly. "Many wars, but many peace talks too. Marcus nodded, finishing his dinner at his small desk. We learned the hard way that fighting isn't always the best answer. He watched as Dawn's fingers moved across the screen, her golden glow reflecting off its surface. What are you reading about now? Earth defense systems, she said simply. Very clever. Hidden things under obvious things. A small warning bell rang in Marcus's mind, but he pushed it away. Of course she would be interested in defenses. She was running from something, after all. That's enough reading for today, he said gently. Are you hungry? Dawn shook her head. Food yesterday. Enough for 3 days. She turned to look out the window at the stars. Your station has many weak spots in maintenance areas. How do you know that? Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Just looking, Dawn said, her glow dimming slightly. Important to know safe places, for hiding. Before Marcus could respond, the lights in his quarters flickered. It had been happening all over the station lately. Small technical problems that the engineers couldn't explain. Third time today, Marcus muttered, making a note to report it. Dawn watched the lights with unusual intensity. Problems spread like water, she said cryptically. Small drops become rivers. Marcus was about to ask what she meant when his door chimed. Dawn immediately dimmed her glow and moved silently into the bedroom. The door slid open to reveal James Porter, one of the senior diplomats. His lined face looked more worried than usual. Read, Porter said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. Sir, is something wrong? Porter's eyes scanned the room. There's something familiar about these incidents. The power fluctuations, the system glitches. He paused, lowering his voice. Have you noticed anything strange lately? Anyone unusual? Marcus kept his face neutral, years of diplomatic training paying off. Nothing out of the ordinary, sir. Porter stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. 20 years ago, on Station Beta, I saw something like this. It started with a refugee. Someone who needed help. Someone who glowed. His eyes widened suddenly, looking past Marcus toward the bedroom door. A soft golden light was seeping under it. Read, Porter said urgently, whatever you think you're doing, whatever you think you're helping. The lights went out completely. When they came back on 3 seconds later, Porter was gone. Dawn, Marcus called out, his heart racing. Did you see what happened? Dawn emerged from the bedroom, her glow steady and calm. He left. Quick. Humans sometimes do that, yes. Marcus stared at the empty doorway. No, he said slowly. No, they don't. That night, as Dawn read more about Earth's history on her tablet, Marcus noticed how her fingers moved across it, not like someone learning a new technology, but like someone who had used it all their life. He watched as she absorbed information about Earth's military capabilities, defense strategies, and diplomatic protocols with an efficiency that seemed less like curiosity and more like analysis. The lights flickered again, and in that brief moment of darkness, Marcus could have sworn Dawn's golden glow shifted into something else, something darker, something older. But when the lights came back on, she was just Dawn again, the scared luminary refugee. Yet for the first time since he'd found her, Marcus wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Marcus couldn't sleep. Porter's disappearance had been reported, but station security found nothing. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. It was as if the senior diplomat had simply vanished into space. You look tired, Dawn said, watching him from her usual spot by the window. Her golden glow seemed stronger today, more steady. Should rest more. I'm fine, Marcus replied, scrolling through security reports on his tablet. Just worried about Porter. The old one. Dawn tilted her head. Maybe he found what he looked for. Left happy. Something about the way she said it made Marcus's skin crawl. He looked up to find Dawn staring at him with those silver eyes that somehow seemed deeper than before. Tell me about luminary culture, he said suddenly. I've met your people before, but never got to learn much about them. Dawn's glow flickered slightly. We, peaceful, make art, sing songs. What kind of songs? A pause. Too long of a pause. Songs of light, she said finally. Hard to explain in English. Marcus nodded slowly, remembering something. You know, it's funny. When I first met you, your English was much worse. You've improved amazingly fast. Good student, Dawn said quickly. Too quickly. Learn fast to survive. The station's lights flickered again, and Marcus noticed how Dawn's eyes followed the power surge like she was reading something in it. The maintenance reports on his tablet showed more system failures across the station, life support hiccups, communication glitches, security camera blackouts. All minor, all temporary, all spreading like a web. Marcus Reed, Dawn said, her voice different somehow. Older. What do humans fear most? He looked at her sharply. What? Simple question. She moved closer, her glow casting strange shadows. Is it death? Pain? Or perhaps, she gestured to the stars outside. The unknown. Before Marcus could answer, his personal communicator buzzed. A text message from Porter's private channel. Maintenance to Manil. Section 7. Hurry. I need to go, Marcus said, standing up. Stay here. Dawn's glow pulsed once. Not safe. Should stay. I'll be back soon, he promised, already heading for the door. The maintenance tunnels were darker than he remembered. Marcus followed the path to Section 7, his footsteps echoing just like they had the day he found Dawn. The hum of machinery seemed different now, less like background noise, more like whispers. He found Porter hunched behind a power junction, his face pale and drawn. Reed, Porter wheezed, grabbing Marcus's arm. Thank God. Listen carefully. 20 years ago, it wasn't a luminary. They look like things we trust, but they're not. They're something else. Something old. They study us, find our weaknesses. Then, a soft golden glow appeared at the end of the tunnel. Dawn, Marcus called out. I told you to stay in the quarters. Couldn't let him finish. Dawn's voice came from the darkness. Not yet. Too soon. Porter's grip on Marcus's arm tightened. Run, boy. Run now. But Marcus stood frozen, watching as Dawn stepped into view. Her glow was changing, shifting like oil on water, golden light giving way to something darker, something that seemed to bend the shadows around it. The Old One knows too much, Dawn said, her voice no longer even trying to sound afraid. Has seen us before. But you, Marcus Reed. She moved closer, her form rippling like dark water. You are different. Special. You showed kindness when you didn't have to. This will be remembered. What are you? Marcus whispered. The thing that had been Dawn smiled, and in that smile was the darkness between stars. Someone who thought humans would be easy to understand. I was wrong. You are. More. The lights went out completely. When they came back on, Porter was gone again. But this time, Marcus had seen it happen, had seen the shadows reach out, had seen them pull. And Dawn was watching him with eyes that no longer pretended to be afraid. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. His hands moved quickly across the keyboard, checking security logs, access records, and system files. With each new discovery, his heart beat faster. Someone had been accessing restricted files through his credentials. Military reports, defense protocols, station blueprints, all viewed during the hours he slept. Behind him, Dawn's glow filled the room with golden light. She hadn't spoken since they returned from the maintenance tunnel, hadn't tried to explain what happened to Porter. Just watched him with those silver eyes that now seemed as deep as space itself. I know what you're doing, Marcus said quietly, not turning around. You're not here for asylum. You never were. Clever, Dawn replied, her voice different now. Deeper, older, like the sound of stars dying. Faster than most to figure it out, but still too late. Marcus spun his chair around. Dawn stood by the window, her form shifting like smoke underwater. The golden glow flickered and wavered, showing glimpses of something darker beneath. "What are you?" he asked again. "We are the Void Collective," she said, her pretense of broken English completely gone. "We study, we learn, we understand. Then we decide." "Decide what?" "Whether a species deserves to continue." Her form rippled, the golden light of the luminary facade fading into patches of deep, shifting darkness. "We have watched 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. Some we helped fall." Marcus thought about the station's malfunctions, the spreading pattern of system failures. "You've been mapping our weaknesses." "Yes." Dawn moved closer, her body now a swirling mix of light and shadow. "The trembling you saw when you found me. That was my body adapting to your environmental systems, learning them, understanding them." The room's lights flickered, and Marcus saw displays all around his quarters glitch and flash. Her infiltration wasn't just in the station's systems, it was everywhere. "The luminary," he said, remembering something. "The real ones. What happened to them?" "They were beautiful," Dawn said, almost sadly. "Peaceful. Trusting. Too trusting. They never saw us coming. Just like you weren't supposed to see through me." Marcus stood up slowly. "But I did. And Porter did, 20 years ago." "What happened then?" "We tested another station. But Porter escaped our observation. A mistake we didn't repeat here." Her form solidified slightly, becoming more humanoid, but still shifting like oil in water. "He had to be removed before he warned others. Just like all obstacles must be removed." "Is that what I am now? An obstacle?" Dawn tilted her head, an eerily human gesture from something so alien. "You are different. You showed kindness when you had no reason to. Protected me when it went against your rules. Even now, knowing what I am, you're not reaching for a weapon." "Would it do any good if I did?" "No," she said simply. "But most species would try anyway, react with fear, with violence. You're still trying to understand, still trying to talk. This is why you're dangerous." Marcus frowned. "Dangerous because we talk. Dangerous because you adapt, because you show mercy without weakness, intelligence without arrogance. The Void Collective has never encountered a species quite like humanity." Her form rippled again, expanding slightly. "We expected you to be simple to analyze, easy to categorize. You are neither." The lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. But in that darkness, Dawn's true form was finally visible, a beam of shifting void and starlight, beautiful and terrifying. "Now," she said, her voice echoing from everywhere at once, "we need to decide what to do about that." In the perfect darkness, Marcus stood his ground. He was afraid. Any sane person would be. But he was also a diplomat. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered more than any weapon ever could. The darkness in Marcus's quarters seemed alive, moving and shifting like waves in a black ocean. Dawn's true form filled the space with patches of void broken by points of light that looked like distant stars. The only familiar thing left was her voice. "Your station's defenses are simple to break," she said, her words echoing strangely in the darkness. "We could shut down life support, open airlocks, turn this metal shell into a tomb." Marcus remained calm, his diplomatic training kicking in. "But you haven't. You're still talking to me. Why?" The darkness swirled, and something like surprise rippled through Dawn's form. Most species would be begging for their lives by now. Would that work? No. Then why waste time? Marcus took a step forward, even though his instincts screamed at him to run. "You've been studying us, learning about us. But I've been studying you too." The points of light in Dawn's form pulsed with interest. "What could you possibly know about us?" "You're thorough, patient. You take time to understand your targets completely before acting." Marcus gestured to his computer. "All those files you accessed. They tell a story. You want to know everything about us. Our strengths, our weaknesses, our history, but especially our wars. War shows the truth of a species. Dawn's voice came from everywhere at once. Does it? Marcus asked. Because you've read about all our wars. But did you understand what came after them? The peace treaties, the alliances between former enemies, how we learned and grew from our mistakes. The darkness shifted, condensing into a more defined shape. Your point? You said I showed kindness when I didn't have to. That humans are different because we show mercy without weakness. Maybe that's what you're really afraid of. Marcus took another step forward. Not our weapons or our technology, but our ability to turn enemies into allies. A ripple of what might have been laughter moved through the void. You think you can ally with us? We who have destroyed civilizations. We who have ended species. I think, Marcus said carefully, that you wouldn't still be talking if you hadn't seen something in us worth considering. Something that made you question your usual methods. The darkness surged forward suddenly, surrounding Marcus completely. He felt the cold of deep space, saw the death of stars, experienced the weight of eons pressing against his mind. But he didn't flinch. Your kind are dangerous, Dawn's voice whispered, now coming from inside his own head. You adapt. You change. You forgive. It makes no logical sense. That's humanity for you, Marcus managed to say despite the pressure. We're full of surprises. The darkness retreated slightly, and Dawn's form solidified into something almost human-shaped, though still made of void and starlight. You're not afraid anymore. Oh, I'm terrified, Marcus admitted with a small smile. But fear doesn't have to control our actions. You've been in our records. You know that's one of our greatest strengths. Yes, Dawn said slowly. Your capacity to act despite fear, to show compassion even to those who might harm you, to seek understanding rather than victory. She moved closer, her form rippling with what might have been uncertainty. The Void Collective has never encountered this before. We don't know how to categorize it. Maybe, Marcus suggested, that's because you're trying to understand us the wrong way. You're looking for weaknesses, for ways to defeat us. But what if instead you tried to learn from us? Dawn was silent for a long moment, her form shifting between patterns of light and darkness. When she finally spoke, her voice held something new, something that sounded almost like hope. Perhaps, she said, that is why I was drawn to you in that maintenance tunnel. Not because you were easy to deceive, but because you showed me something I had never seen before. The lights in the room slowly came back on, but Dawn remained in her true form, no longer hiding behind the luminary disguise. Tell me more, she said, about this human concept of turning enemies into allies. Marcus sat at his desk while Dawn hovered nearby, her form still shifting between darkness and starlight. On his computer screen, he pulled up files about Earth's greatest diplomatic achievements, times when enemies became friends, when war turned to peace. See this. He pointed to a historical peace treaty. These two nations fought for 100 years. Now they're closest allies. Dawn's form rippled with interest. Because one side won. Because both sides realized they could gain more through friendship than conflict. Marcus scrolled through more documents. That's something your data collection missed. Humans don't just fight or surrender. We find another way. The Void Collective has never considered another way. Dawn moved closer, her starlit form casting strange shadows. We categorize. We judge. We act. Marcus turned to face her. And how's that working out? You've destroyed civilizations, but have you ever learned from them? Really learned? The points of light in Dawn's form pulsed rapidly. You're suggesting we've been inefficient. I'm suggesting you've been missing opportunities. Marcus stood up. Look at what happened here. You came to study our weaknesses. Instead, you found something you didn't expect. Something that made you curious. Your kindness, Dawn said softly. Your ability to help even those who might be enemies. Exactly. And now you have a choice. Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the stars. You can try to destroy us, like you've destroyed others. But you already know we're different. We adapt. We survive. We turn defeats into victories not through strength, but through understanding. Dawn's form shifted, becoming more solid but still cosmic in appearance. The collective will want to know my findings. They expect a weakness to exploit, a way to ensure humanity cannot threaten our dominance. Marcus smiled. Then tell them you found one. Tell them humanity's greatest weakness is our willingness to trust, to show mercy, to offer friendship even to those who came as enemies. That is not a weakness, Dawn said, a note of confusion in her voice. No, Marcus agreed. It's our greatest strength. But it took you living among us to understand that. Imagine what else you might learn if you approached other species the same way. Dawn was quiet for a long moment, her form swirling with complex patterns of light and shadow. You're using my own curiosity against me, my own desire to understand. I'm using diplomacy, Marcus corrected, taking what I've learned about you and offering a solution that benefits us both. That's another human trait your data didn't show you. We look for ways everyone can win. And what do we gain from this? Diplomatic approach. Marcus leaned against his desk. Knowledge. Real understanding, not just data. A chance to learn why species are worth preserving rather than just deciding their fate. And maybe something your collective has never had before. Actual allies who work with you because they want to, not because they're afraid. The lights in the room flickered, but this time it wasn't threatening. Dawn was processing, considering, her form shifting between patterns as she thought. The collective has existed for millions of years, she said finally. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. But never has a species suggested we might be the ones who need to change. First time for everything, Marcus said with a slight smile. That's another human trait. We're full of surprises. Dawn moved to the window, her cosmic form reflecting in the glass. If I brought this proposal to the collective, if I suggested this new approach, then you'd be doing what humans do best, Marcus said, taking a bad situation and finding a way to make it better for everyone. Dawn turned to him, her form solidifying into something that combined the cosmic and the human, beautiful and strange. You're not just negotiating for humanity's survival, are you? You're trying to change us, to make us better. Like I said, Marcus replied, we're full of surprises. For the first time since he'd known her, Dawn made a sound that might have been laughter, a shimmer of light and shadow that filled the room with wonder instead of fear. 1 month later, Marcus stood before the Earth Defense Council, with Dawn floating beside him in her true form. The chamber was silent as the assembled leaders stared at the beam of void and starlight who had come to warn them about her own people. The Void Collective has existed since the first stars died, Dawn explained, her voice echoing through the chamber. We have watched civilizations rise and fall, but humanity has shown us something new, something we never considered before. A council member leaned forward. And what is that? The power of choice, Dawn said, the strength found in mercy, the ability to grow not by destroying others, but by understanding them. Marcus stepped forward. Dawn isn't just warning us about the collective. She's offering us a chance to establish the first ever peaceful contact with them, something no species has ever achieved. The room erupted in whispers. Dawn's form rippled with what Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement. She had predicted this reaction. Humans, always talking, always debating, always trying to understand. The station malfunctions, another council member said. The system infiltration. Porter's disappearance. How can we trust this isn't another deception? Dawn moved forward, her cosmic form casting strange shadows across the council chamber. James Porter is alive. I have brought him back. He is being treated in your medical facility now. A gesture of trust. Marcus nodded. Dawn could have completed her mission, could have given the collective everything they needed to destroy us. Instead, she chose to learn from us, to understand us, and in doing so, she realized there was another path. The collective has always judged species by their capacity for violence, Dawn explained. By their weapons, their defenses, their ability to destroy. But humans, her form shimmered with points of light like distant stars. Humans judge by the capacity for change, for growth, for turning enemies into friends. An older council member stood up. And what guarantee do we have that the rest of your collective will see things the way you do? None, Dawn said simply. But I am not alone. Others of my kind have been watching, learning, questioning our old ways. We have destroyed so much, learned so little. Perhaps, her form shifted, becoming more defined while still cosmic in nature. Perhaps it is time for the Void Collective to evolve. Marcus smiled, remembering the scared luminary girl he'd found in the maintenance tunnel. How far they'd both come since then. We're proposing a new diplomatic protocol, he explained to the council. One specifically designed for dealing with shape-shifting species. Dawn has agreed to help us understand her people's capabilities, while we help her understand our way of solving conflicts. A fair exchange, Dawn added. Knowledge for knowledge. Understanding for understanding. This is the human way, is it not? The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then the head counselor stood up. Mr. Reed, she said, when you found what you thought was a scared alien girl in that maintenance tunnel, did you ever imagine it would lead to this? Marcus looked at Dawn, who had become something neither human nor purely cosmic, something new, something that represented change itself. Actually, he said, I think this is exactly what humanity does best. We take the unexpected, the dangerous, the unknown, and we find a way to make it into something better. Not through force, but through understanding. Dawn's form pulsed with warm light, and in doing so, you change not only yourselves, but those around you, even beings as old as the stars themselves. The head counselor nodded slowly. Then let this be the beginning of a new chapter in human history, not as victims or targets of the Void Collective, but as the species that taught them there was another way. As the council members began to discuss the details of the new diplomatic protocols, Marcus caught Dawn's eye, or what passed for eyes in her cosmic form. Thank you, she said softly, for showing kindness to a scared girl in a maintenance tunnel. Thank you, Marcus replied, for being willing to learn from it. Above them, through the chamber's skylight, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging that something profound had changed in the universe that day. Sometimes, it turned out, the greatest victories came not from strength of arms, but from strength of heart.